All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and joining us for our presentation. We'll get started in just a moment. While everybody's trickling in, I want to quickly take you over to Acelab for a moment and show you where you can learn more about Rulon on Acelab. So, all right, cool. So should be able to see my screen now. We are on Rulon's international Acelab page. So we've got some pretty basic information for you to check out. We also have video and then many of their products for you to explore and learn more about. So you can click into any one of these pages to get more information. You're also welcome to save it to your firm library right here for future reference. So I encourage you all, when you have a moment, to check out their page. I'll drop a link in the chat for you to explore. I've also got case studies down here as well. So check that out when you get the chance. A couple other housekeeping items to go over. Today is an AIA accredited presentation. So we did collect your numbers upon registration. If you're worried we didn't get your number, I'm going to drop a form in the chat so you can fill that out and ensure that you get credit for today. We will also have a poll during the presentation. So when you see that pop up, I encourage you to participate if you're interested in getting more information from the Rulon team after today's webinar. So I think that's everything from my end. So Wendy, I'll pass it back to you.
All right, excellent. Well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. Welcome to Designing with Wood. I am the Rulon International rep for Northern California, Reno, and Hawaii, and I'll be going through this presentation with you today. With that said, I am going to turn off my video just to ensure I get the best connection possible. All right. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, hold on.
I think it's not in presenter mode yet, but
there we go.
See. There we go. Perfect.
All right. And that's advanced, correct? To the next slide.
Yes.
All right, great. So again, my name is Wendy. I have been in the industry for about 17 years. 3.5 of those are with Rulon. And I really want to start by addressing the most common question I do get asked during presentations, where my accent is from. So I am not from California. I am from Michigan. And if anyone is joining today from Michigan, 2026 is going to be the year for the Lions. So please chin up. Let's just address that first. And on the right side here, you're going to see a snapshot from our website. If you need assistance finding who is your local sales rep, when you go on our website, you're going to go up to the top right and schedule a discovery call. From there, you're going to enter your zip code, and then your local sales rep will pop up. All right, so before we get started on the presentation, I just want to talk a little bit about Rulon. We have been in business just short of 50 years, and our headquarters and manufacturing is in St. Augustine, Florida, which, if you do play trivia, it is the nation's oldest city. Our production facility is 115,000 square feet. And what we do is we manufacture decorative and acoustical wood walls and ceilings. Oops, sorry, 1 second. All right. So you're also going to see a term on here under manufacturing called Endure. So Endure is a wood alternative system we also offer. This is an engineered polymer and great for many applications, specifically for exterior or some of the more harsh conditions. So if you do want more information, this is not included today. Please do let us know, and the local sales rep will be able to go over that information with you. Rulon is a US made, and we do qualify for Build America, Buy America Act. We are an industry leader, and we supply projects all over the world. We are also the leader in sustainability. I've been to many manufacturing plants in my career, and I can say by comparison, Rulon is extremely clean. Part of that is because we actually vacuum up the sawdust during our manufacturing process, and that is donated to a local business that utilizes it for biofuel. We focus on master planning to move material as efficiently as possible throughout the process. We only use water-based solvents. And another thing that we do as well, which is really, a very cool program, we take drops of extra material that's created during our manufacturing process, and our team assembles guitars for kids, which it's a program where we then donate these guitars onto various children's hospitals. And this is just one of the many ways that Rulon gives back. So you have a lot of choices during the specification process. When you do work with Rulon, you are supporting these types of amazing programs. We also have our headquarters as a showroom. So we love to have guests come here, and we are very, very proud of what we do. We're a family-owned, veteran-owned company. So if you are in the area, or if you're interested in learning more about Rulon, please do reach out, and we'd love to have you come visit our facility. Additionally, from a sustainability perspective, we have third-party HPDs. We can offer no added formaldehyde and ultra-low emitting formaldehyde cores. We have our Indoor Advantage Gold certification. We have LCA and EPDs for our manufacturing facility, and we can offer FSC mixed credits. I highly recommend you take a look at our website. Our sustainability page is excellent. We also have a director of sustainability, which again, we run into a lot of sustainability requirements here in California. We can help with your sustainability documentation, which seems to be a huge benefit to our clients. As far as the program today, as mentioned, it is AIA and IDCEC accredited, so you will get credit for participating. And what we're going to cover today, we're going to focus on the top two bullets here, which are understanding the various characteristics of wood. And then we're going to go through the most common or the most popular systems within wood walls and ceilings. So those two bullets are going to be covered by the primary sections that you're going to see here on the slide. The secondary sections that you see on the bottom were really created to cover the FAQs that come out of presentations or project discussions that we have. I'm going to touch on many of the highlights of the secondary sections or critical information during my presentation. Once we get done with the primary sections, I'm just going to choose two that we're going to go through. If you want any additional information, please again reach out to your local sales rep, and they will be able to go through that additional information with you. All right, so now we're going to talk about characteristics of wood. So we have hardwood and softwood. The biggest differential between the two is hardwood typically loses their leaves where softwood remain evergreen. Hardwood has a very strict, very stringent set of rules that is used to determine the grading. Softwoods conversely do not. They just do a visual inspection to make sure that all the material is sound, is not going to break, there's no cracks, etc. When we talk about the appearance of hardwood, all of the species looks very different from the other. So if we look at a white oak to an ash to a maple, they're all going to appear very different with their graining. Softwoods, however, are going to be fairly similar even across species. Structurally, hardwood is much harder and more dense than softwood. This means that hardwood does not necessarily machine quite as easily. However, once a hardwood is a finished product or system on site, it is very stable and more durable than a softwood would be. One thing to note, Rulon does manufacture with hardwood systems. Softwood, again, conversely, has a low hardness factor, which means that it's easy to machine. However, once it's on site in a finished state, it is going to be more delicate than a hardwood would be. Hardwood is typically used for wood ceilings and walls, millwork and furniture, where softwood is typically used for paper and structural lumber. So now let's talk about solid versus veneer. So you see the image here on the left, that is solid wood. It's going to be an actual chunk of wood. It is very sturdy, very durable. One thing to note visually with solid wood is it is going to have natural variation. So for example, if you do work with Rulon on a project and we bring in a project sample with 3 blades, we're gonna choose blades that are gonna be representative of the natural variation that you can expect within the species. Solid wood are more durable than veneers, especially on the corners or edges. Another advantage is solid wood is very easy to work with, easy to trim on site. So if a contractor has a solid wood panel grill, which is a system we're going to discuss shortly, which is very common, and they have to cut it on site, they're just going to touch up the end with a stain plus clear, which is what we supply with the project. So it's a very simple process. Solid wood is also hygroscopic. So what this means is it absorbs and desorbs water. So as humidity fluctuates in an area, wood can shrink and swell inside the space. So for this reason, and again, we'll talk about it shortly when we get to systems, we may require dowels on some panel grill depths or thicknesses just to ensure that the blades remain straight over the life of the project. Now let's talk a little bit about veneers. So veneer is real wood. It is a very thin slice of wood, as you see in the image here on the right. Veneers are more consistent. It has less variation. It's going to look almost manufactured. So if that's something you're looking for, you may want to consider a veneer system. Because we have this very thin slice of wood, you are able to ship veneers more economically longer distances. So because of this, you are going to have access to more species if you do specify a veneer. Veneers are internally stable in a climatized area, so they will not shrink or swell, as we spoke hardwood can do. However, there's some cons. Veneers are difficult to trim and work with on site. So the same scenario we just spoke about, if you had a veneer panel grill, once you cut the end of the panel grill, you're then going to expose the MDF core of the system. So not only are you going to have to seal it, but you also have to apply an edge band to it. So again, it's just a little bit more difficult to work with on site than a solid wood. Now let's talk about cuts of wood. So on the left, on the top left, you're going to see plain sawn. So this is the most economical. It is the most common. If you look at the image of the log on the left, you're just slicing directly through. All benefits, however, one thing to note with plain sawn, you may get this triangular cathedral graining that you see on the little image of the species in the graining. Quartered sawn is the next most common cut. It is a bit more expensive as you're slicing the log into 4 pieces and then slicing perpendicular to the grain pattern. However, one thing you're going to get with quartered sawn material, you're going to get straighter grain. Lastly, we have rift sawn on the top right. This is really only important when you're looking at working with oak species. Oak has unique feeding tubes where this may be a consideration. It is very expensive. And what I recommend, if you think you may want rift sawn for your project, please talk to us. Our team is extremely knowledgeable and experienced, and we would love to talk about the project specifics. I had a project last year where they were considering rift sawn, and it was a panel grill with a 3/4 inch blade that was going to be facing down. The blades were very close together, so there was going to be very little impact to going with rift sawn, and the price was going to be very expensive. So again, please talk to us and we can kind of work through if that's something that you might want for your project. And let's talk a little bit more about veneer and some of the common veneer terminology. So first we have a veneer leaf. And if you remember that image that we showed a couple slides ago, all of those thin slices of wood, each one of those is going to be a veneer leaf. A flitch is a set of sequential leaves of a veneer. And when we talk about some of the common matches that we see in the industry, we have book match and slip match. So book match is when a veneer is attached to a single panel. And you take those veneer leaves just as you see here on the image, you're gonna open them like a book, and then you're gonna adhere them just like that to the panel. Slip match is if you had those veneer leaves stacked up, and you're gonna slide them across the panel, almost like sliding across a deck of cards. You're adhering them in consecutive order. That would be a slip match. These are available in most species. Anyone you talk to in the wood industry should be familiar with book match or slip match. And as I mentioned, these are when you're attaching veneer to a single panel. This is not across an entire wall of panels. And just some things that we have learned over the years to consider as they can make the project more complex. The first one is a sequence match. So this is where you have a wall panel where all of the walls are going to be veneer panels across, and you're taking the veneer and you're going in consecutive order panel to panel. A lot can happen in transit, on site. The wrong panels can get cut. Things can happen. And if something happens to one of these panels, you cannot put another panel in there because then they would be out of order. You have to remake all of the panels. So again, it can be very cost prohibitive, very high waste factor. Blueprint match. So this is the same concept, but instead of just having the veneers in consecutive order on the wall, now you're also doing it on other areas like the ceiling. So you're just compounding that possibility that you may have to remake panels if something happens to one of them. The last one is selecting flitches, and I do have some projects out here where this is a requirement for the client. However, it can, again, lead to a lot of complexity. So this is where you're selecting or choosing a specific stack of veneer leaves for the project. Projects can have very long life cycles. Again, this happened to me about 2 years ago on a project. A flitch was selected initially. By the time the project got to us to review for bid, the flitch was no longer available. In that case, we were able to find a backup that was a very close option, which was fine. But again, that's just an extra level of complexity that you may have when you're selecting flitches. They can have long lead times and very high pricing as well. So now let's get into some of the system configurations. First, we're going to start with linear. So with linear, it is typically going to be solid wood. We can offer veneer in certain circumstances, but again, typically we recommend solid wood here. It's going to have a monolithic aesthetic. And within linear, there's a couple different types, and I want to go through those types to better explain the system. The first one we have here is a continuous open system. And you're going to notice that there is random length boards and tongue and groove joints. So this would be, again, a continuous system. With this system, it can be used on the interior and exterior. So if you use it on the interior, in that reveal that you see, it's going to actually be felt. So with this system, you're able to achieve a 0.55 NRC without insulation or a 0.65 with 1-inch insulation. For the exterior here, we would use a black ABS spacer because again, you don't need acoustics on the exterior, and also it's just going to do better in that exterior application. And one thing I want to address is solid wood can be used on the exterior. This is a great example. When you use solid wood on the exterior, it just has to be out of direct sunlight and direct precipitation. So we use a 100% vacuum coated exterior rated UV cured finish, which is low VOC and water-based. So again, great for both applications, interior and exterior. So this is a very common installation that we would see where it has the wood on both the wall and the ceiling. I like to show this project as well because on this particular project, we actually have a tighter reveal. So on the previous one, and our standard for linear is a 3/4 inch reveal. I've been seeing some projects recently where they want to go a bit smaller. So we also offer a 1/4 inch reveal as a standard as well. This is a beautiful project out there for anyone on the East Coast. I like to show this project because if you look up at the top kind of middle right, you're going to see an access panel. We get a lot of questions around what does certain lighting look like? What do access panels look like? We have a very large gallery of installed images. Please reach out to us and we'll be able to share some of that up front to make everybody's life a little bit easier. And now we're going to move to a linear close system. So now you're going to notice in the reveal, instead of having that black, we now actually have a piece of wood. Typically with the closed system, we see it used on the exterior, and that is because you're not going to get any type of NRC or acoustical performance. And again, it's just helps to give that more monolithic look because now you don't have that black reveal showing. Now we're going to move to panelized. So on all of the previous images, you saw those random length tongue and groove joints. With the panelized system, now we're going to use just one board length. And it's extremely a popular choice if you need access. Because with this system, you're going to be able to access each one of these panels individually. Where we saw the image earlier, access panels would need to be used on the continuous system. Here's another example, very popular within especially education, wall systems. And now we'll move to panel grills. Panel grills are the most popular system we have, I think, for a very long time. There is a lot you can do to customize them. Typically, they're going to be solid wood. Again, there's exceptions for when we would offer veneer, but typically we'd offer solid wood. With our panel grill system, you can customize or modify many of the components, and they still probably would fall under our standard systems because we have a very large offering. So from the thickness of the blade, the depth of the blade, the number of blades per foot. Sometimes we have dowels, sometimes we have wood backers, sometimes we use both. So all of those can be modified. A common question I get all the time is, I want a panel grill on my project, but I want to reduce the cost of it. The quickest way to do that is to reduce the depth of the blade or reduce the number of blades per foot. And one other thing I just want to mention as well while we're on the topic, I very commonly get asked for budgets. We can do that for you. If you wanted a budget, for example, for a panel grill system, your local rep is just going to ask a couple questions. What system or systems are you considering? What species are you considering? And how many square feet? Once we have some of those components, we're able to get a real-time estimate from our team so that you can kind of compare, some of the different options you're looking at. So that seems to be very helpful as well. If you have a lighting or different type of component that you're going to have in the plenum, you're able to send that cut sheet to us. And for example, with a project like this, we can go through with our engineers and make sure there's going to be enough clearance in the system you're choosing. Here's another project. This is an airport. So we do very small projects to very large projects as well. We have many standard systems, but we do excel at customization. So again, reach out to us and we'll be happy to talk early from the design phase. Another option that we introduced a few years ago was printing. So we often would have projects where somebody would have to come in after the system was installed and paint or put some type of application on it. Now we're able to offer printing in-house. So it can be flat or 3D layered printing for an outcome like this. And again, it's just one person touching it versus multiple trades, which is always an advantage. Many of you probably have a box of standard Rulon finishes in your library. That's where we always start. We have standard species and standard finishes that we like to work with and are most popular within the industry. However, we also can do very custom. Here's an example of a custom project that we did. If you want us to match something, we just need to pick up a control in your office. Our team will review it and we'll be able to get back to you with some options. And these next couple projects, I really just like to show because again, we can do amazing customized installations. If you have a rendering, if you have some initial idea, come to your local sales rep and we can work on those solutions with you. We also recently launched a pre-sales team, which includes an architect, an engineer, and an installation specialist on our team. We can work through some of the early design on projects like this with you. And we not only work on determining how we can meet the aesthetic you're looking for, but as a manufacturer, it has proven to be very helpful because we can also work through some things we can suggest to keep the price of the system down, which again, ultimately may mean the difference of keeping the wood on the project or not. And we also, if it's something custom, we're able to pull together some basic details that we can include in the initial documentation that will help during the bidding process. Here's another project we did, again, getting into very custom. This is Hard Rock in Florida, and we wanted it to look like guitar strings strumming around the project. Beautiful outcome. So now let's move to cubes. So with cubes, this is a, I guess, trend alert from California. So when I look in all of our images of installed systems, cubes were very popular, maybe from 1990 to 2007, and then the images just kind of stopped. But they are coming back, and they are coming back strong. I probably have a cube meeting in California every week and a half at this point, so we're starting to see them coming back into design. With this particular system you see here, this is a continuous cube system. It looks like one giant connected cube ceiling. It's actually panels. So with the cube system, we typically do 2x4 or 4x6 panels. We supply wood main tees and cross tees that you actually are putting those panels into. Cubes are very popular because it gives you a lot of space to play in the plenum with lighting, sprinklers, all of that. With our cube system, again, typically we're going to recommend solid wood. If it goes fairly deep height-wise, we're going to move to a veneer. This is a continuous system, which we just spoke about. We also have tegular, which if you take a look at the image in the middle, that would be an example of tegular. And like all of our systems, we are able to work with you on the thickness of the cube, the depth of the cube, the size of the cell. This is an example, again, of that tegular or modular cube. I haven't seen as many of these specified, but this would be your option if you needed access. So these are going to be drop-in panels. So we use them with heavy-duty grid. You're just going to drop those in, so you're going to have full access if required. And this is more representative of the types of projects that we're starting to see. So I worked with one of the designers who was involved with this project, and they wanted to add an accent of wood, but also not feel like the ceiling was completely closed off. So they wanted still some of that industrial look. So this was a great solution for that space. Another very similar example, this is Jet.com headquarters. So you're keeping that ceiling open, but just adding that wood to this space where maybe there was not going to be anything else previously. This one is near and dear to me. This is a project I was involved in Transamerica here in San Francisco, California. They renovated the building, and we have cubes throughout the lobby and throughout many floors, which I think is an excellent fit for the geometry of the building. So now we're going to move on to our veneer systems. So again, everything we just spoke about, typically we would offer in solid wood. With our veneer panels, we offer, they're all going to be in veneer, right? So we spoke earlier, with veneer, you're going to have extensive choices on what type of veneer you can choose from. Our panels come up in sizes up to 4 foot by 10 foot. Here's a couple examples of some veneer projects. This is a unique one that we installed in Iowa. And with this one, our local rep, Doug, who is excellent, he worked with the designer to come up with 5 panel types. And I think the largest one had 4 hexagons. in one 10-foot panel. So just what a dramatic addition to the wall there. Oftentimes we have flat panels, flat veneer panels, but we also get into curved panels as well on the project, very popular within healthcare. This one I like because you're using two different types of veneers. So we have a cherry veneer and a maple veneer that we used. Now let's get into our acoustical panels. So we spoke earlier that panel grills are the most popular. I can speak at least for my market, acoustical panels are probably the second most popular. So when we take a look at this, this project really highlights how custom we can get. So if you take a look closely at some of the images, you're going to see that we did custom perforations based on the size and the shape of the panels. Everything is very clean and beautiful on all of the edges. On some of the panels, you're going to see we also created borders. That's something we're able to do depending on how much open area is on the panel or just preference. So that's something, again, we can work with you on as we get into the project specifics. With our acoustical panels, just like with our flat panels, we can go up to 4 foot by 10 foot and very, very high acoustical performance. You can get up to 0.85 NRC without insulation, and you can get up to 0.95 if you look at 1 inch or 2 inch of insulation. So again, when you work with your sales rep, let us know from the beginning what is your minimum NRC you're trying to achieve, and we can work backwards on what options we have available. This project is, again, just a great representation of the types of projects that we work on, whether it's flat panels, it also has panel grills, and then it also has perforated panels that you see there by the stage. The micro perforated panels are very popular. Even up close, our A750 and A760, you can barely tell they're perforated, especially when they're at ceiling height. Really popular choice when you have a lobby with a lot of hard surfaces, floors, and glass. Another example out of Central Michigan, great use within education to make sure you have speech intelligibility within, where you need to make sure you can hear and learn. The other trend that we're seeing is micro perforations were very popular for a long time, and we absolutely are still seeing them being specified. But like all trends, people want to see something a bit different. So with this particular type, we are seeing grooving and micro grooving that is coming out, just again, to have something a little bit different coming to the market. Here's another example of a micro grooved wall panel. And then we can also curve panels. So whether they're acoustical or non-acoustical, we can do curving. So with this project, we have some rigid panels on this project, but we also have some flexible panels. So with some of these panels that you see here, we're able to flex those panels to take the shape of the drywall that's on site. So again, all different types of solutions. We'll work with you on all the specifics on the project. As we spoke earlier, multiple species available because we're working with veneers up to 4 foot by 10 foot. We can have the non-perforated or perforated if you do require NRC. With this system, very simple mounting, you're just using Z-clips. We also do box panels. So it looks complicated, but they're actually very simple systems. With this system, we actually just hang it with hanger wire. This is in Las Vegas, so we have some flat, concave, convex. And lastly, we're going to talk about beams and baffles. So this is a beautiful project we have out of New York in the Museum of Natural History. When we talk about beams and baffles, number one, they're non-structural, they're decorative only. We go up to 10 feet long, custom sizing, we can do curving, etc. When we manufacture a beam, one important point is the veneer is unbroken. So we kerf the back of the panel, we fold it into a U shape as you see here on the top, that little drawing. The veneer is unbroken, which makes for a very clean edge and very clean finish, which is very critical. The beams are also hollow, so if you have cable or wiring, you're able to run those through the beam if you need to. And again, these are veneer systems. So if you're choosing a veneer, so you're going to have many options to choose from. Here's an example. We kind of start with a very traditional use of beams. So this is a project we did in Frederick. On this project, this is our linear system on the back, and then we have beams there on the surface. This is a timeless project out of Salt Lake City. I think, you realize how well it does and how it withstands the test of time when you notice all of the computers and everything and the desks and just how old this image is, but the ceiling still looks fantastic. And then we start to get into some of the more recent and I guess modern versions of beams and baffles. So here it almost looks similar to maybe some of the cubes we saw earlier. This is at Amtrak in New York. And here we have a Starbucks that we did in Las Vegas. So we have some custom beams there on the left. And then we have some custom linear on the back wall as well. And lastly, I'm pretty confident this is the most custom project that Rulon has ever done. So this is in Seattle, and they wanted it to look like the water. So numerous different types of beams were used on this project. We worked significantly with the design team to make this happen. And I believe out of this entire installation, there was only 5 beams that we ended up replacing once it was on site, where we had to go back and remake 5 beams. So an amazing work by everybody, and it turned out to be an extremely beautiful project. So with that said, the primary sections are complete. I just want to go through 2 more sections quickly because these are the most commonly requested in my market and seem to be the most beneficial. So first, we're just going to go through engineered systems. So we take important factors into consideration and how we're going to respond and apply them to the systems we manufacture. So from attachment methods, systems, in-house shop drawings, and project support, I just want to go through each one of these quickly. So first of all, attachment methods. Rulon uses almost exclusively non-proprietary attachment methods. The only proprietary system is really the clip rail that we use with our linear system, which is also very simple and straightforward. We use attachment methods that contractors are comfortable with, including Z-clips, heavy-duty grid, C-hangers. We don't want to make it difficult for contractors on site. So we want to make sure, we get the best project outcome. We don't want to worry about extensive installation manuals. So again, we use things that they're used to using regularly on projects to keep it as simple and successful as possible. We have a team that is going to review your project specifics, and anything that we need to take account of or adjust because of, we do that. So plenum space, accessibility, layouts, etc. We consider all of these things. Rulon does all of our shop drawings in-house. We offer project-specific shop drawings for projects over 800 square feet. If it's not over 800 square feet, we still have standard details available. When I say in-house shop drawings, I mean in-house. We do not use any third parties. So we include the standard details, project-specific details, panel layouts, etc. This ensures that you understand and the contractor understands the system and how it's going to install to the ceiling or wall. So be sure you don't allow for subbed out shop drawings. They're just never up to par. And people doing the subbed out shop drawings don't understand the nuances of the system, etc. So it definitely can run into issues later on during the project. And with Rulon, we support your project through the entire life cycle to make sure it's a successful project for everyone. We prefer to start at the beginning to be involved early with design. And we also may suggest a pre-install workshop if it's a more complicated project. On-site, Rulon is really the only wood wall and ceiling manufacturer that practices what we call boots on the ground. So everyone who works for Rulon is employed by Rulon. We are not independent sales reps. And part of our role is to also have close relationships with all of the ceiling contractors in your market. So that is what we do with our other part of our time. So we will, once it gets to the point of the project being sold, we go to the job site to work with the installing contractor to make sure the project goes smoothly. And the last section I just want to also go through really quick is fire. So with fire, fire performance is really important because if a building is on fire, we want to ensure our products burn slow, so everyone has time to get out of the building for life safety. Everything Rulon manufactures is Class A. So we have ASTM E84, which is the most commonly recognized, the certification that we typically have to provide for all projects. However, we do have other certifications listed here if needed. When we talk about achieving Class A, the way we achieve it is different depending on if it's a veneer product or a solid wood product. With a veneer product, the fire performance is achieved through the core, which you're going to see here, this MDF, this red color in the core. So that is through the core, the inside of the system. With solid wood, conversely, the Class A is achieved through the coating process. So again, everything we do is Class A, but there's different ways we achieve it depending on the system. No matter who you work with, ask to see the independent certification, make sure it's not expired, and make sure the certification that you have is for the system or product that is going to be on your project. And when the coating process is used, it is simple if we go through the fire retardant coating path, because then the coating is just added to the top coat and the material is able to maintain the shape. However, we also have fire retardant treated wood, which you see here on the left. So this is when this is done through the impregnation process. It can cause issues. So this process is when they actually remove the water particles from the wood, and then they force a chemical back in the wood to get it that fire rating. If they don't redry it to the correct percentage, you may get warping and twisting that you see here on the right. So just some things to note. That is everything I had for you guys today. Thank you again. We really appreciate your time. I hope you had a little bit of fun and learned a few new things. We appreciate your time and look forward to working with all of you in the future.
Thank you, Wendy. Would you mind mentioning the part about the Q&A, just so people know that you'll be following up?
Yes, yep. So if anyone submitted any questions during this process, we took note of everything, and we definitely, the local salesperson will be back in touch with responses to any of your questions.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.